Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. Kerry Lutz, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited for our time together. And like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go all the way up to today. And then we want to talk about the things you're doing in terms of podcasting and then also the Financial Survival Network too.
Sure. Well, I was born in a leafy suburb of New York, in, I guess you'd call it a bedroom community in New Jersey, a well-off community. That's where I kind of grew up from age 5 to 17. And then, I'd always gone to New York. New York was just a quick either bus ride or a train ride away. Spent a lot of time in the city, probably more time than I should have, concerts and such. Went to school in the city, and my family had there was a family business, legal printing, which now is obsolete. But back then, it was a good business. Basically high margins, high aggravation, quick turnaround, a lot of stress.
Wow.
And eventually I went into that business. I did sales, paralegal. And then I said, I should just go to law school because at some point this business isn't going to exist. We didn't know about the internet back then. This was early 80s, but I just felt like there would be some digital substitution for the business. That didn't happen for almost 20 years, but I was prepared. Went to law school, got my JD, got admitted, and kept in the business. Eventually sold that business to my largest competitor. Had a nice payday. Was married, had 3 kids, living in the suburbs of Westchester, New York, which is like a suburb of New York City to the north.
Yeah.
And my first wife passed away. I had to raise 3 kids, and basically, after I sold the company, I was more or less semi-retired, or I didn't work 9 to 5 ever again. I practiced law for a few years in there, really hated that. Kind of wandered around and finally got into buying distressed debt. And that was great for like 7 years. But, it's kind of business. It's just like, it's negative. You're suing people, collecting money you're owed, turning your assets into cash. It's disrupting their lives. Eventually, I just said, I can't do this anymore. Sold out of that firm to my partners, moved on, and kind of floated around. I was consulting to mortgage banks, to hedge funds, and eventually moved. I like to say my marriage went south, and so did I. And I moved to Florida, and I've been podcasting since 2010, and literally sometimes the podcast, before there was any competition back there, I had way more listeners than I do now, way more bigger community, but we still have pretty large community there. Some of our YouTubes will get 100,000+ downloads.
Wow.
And it's basically an interview format. I also consult to mining companies and energy companies, junior miners, microcap energies, to help them brand their companies and make them investable. And basically, that's about it. I learned how to dance 7 years ago. I started taking dance lessons, and I haven't stopped.
Wow,
And
that's awesome.
And I do a little stand-up comedy now.
Oh, I love it. So are
That's
you doing the open nights, or are you on tour?
Yeah, open mics. I could, if I was motivated enough, I think I could actually do it and do cruise ships and things, but I'm not like going to go travel around to all these crappy comedy clubs,
Yeah.
to get booed,
Right.
because when you're doing stand-up comedy until you're like Jerry Seinfeld or Sebastian Maniscalco, you're going to bomb,
Yeah.
and you're going to bomb bad sometimes. And yeah, I can take that. That doesn't bother me, but it's just a lot of energy. And yeah, so that's what I do. I consult with a few businesses on how to go public via SPAC,
Hmm.
and that's where we're at now.
Wow, that's awesome, man. Do you mind if I back up just a couple of
Sure.
years? Okay. So where were you, what city were you born and raised in? It's a suburb of New York, right?
Well, I was born in Newark, New Jersey. I
Gotcha.
was raised in Short Hills, New Jersey.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So in high school, did you have a favorite subject?
I think it was like recess or lunch.
That
But
was mine too.
actually, they didn't really have a subject that interested me so much there,
Yeah.
but certain ones, like I loved history, and you know, I I liked public speaking, but we didn't have any public speaking there.
I gotcha.
So computers were in their stone age. Back when I was a kid, they had teleterminals with yellow punch tape, and you really had, my best friend spent his whole junior high and high school in the computer center,
Yeah.
but I wasn't, my mind didn't kind of go in those directions. But eventually he got me very much into computers. And, a lot of my successes in earlier businesses were due to the ability to take applications. I couldn't code worth a damn. It's
Yeah.
just not my brain. But to take applications like mail merge
Hmm.
and um, database operations and manipulate data, marketing. I did like the world's first CRM, but I didn't know it was a CRM and that it had any value at all. But
Right.
basically, we'd get leads, all these lawyers who filed notices of appeal, and
Hmm.
about a third of them were going to go through with their appeal.
Hmm.
So I had a database after 3 years of every single lawyer in New York State that had filed a notice of appeal,
Wow.
and the salespeople had called them, taken notes, knew who they were using. Eventually, when CD-ROMs made their presence known, I
Hmm.
got the Martindale Hubbell lawyer directory, put that in on a CD-ROM. You weren't supposed to have one for each individual person. I
Right.
figured out how to share a CD-ROM so everybody could look up where their attorneys, their backgrounds, and a lot of my salespeople were attorneys, so they could say, "Hey, what year did you graduate from Brooklyn Law?" I graduated in 75,
Hmm.
and the sales absolutely took off from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Because you find like some sort of commonality and you connect, right?
yeah,
Yeah. That's why we
yep,
do what we do with this podcast, because people connect with your life story, right? Like they went to law
absolutely.
school or they always wanted to or whatever, that type of thing. So, so growing up where you grew up in Jersey, just outside New York, what was your favorite thing about growing up there?
I didn't have the happiest childhood. It's kind of different than everyone else. I was a square peg in a round hole.
Mm.
But I have to say, I liked fall. And we had this place, the reservation, where it was just unspoiled, and go hang out there
Hmm.
after school, hike, hike up mountains and stuff, little
Hmm.
mountains, babies. And I liked that. And I liked uh, cutting school and going into New York for the day. That was always fun. And, going into New York for a concert, rock concert, love that. So, yeah, just the proximity to New York I liked.
I got you. I got you. So it sounds like it was a pretty cool childhood. I mean, you didn't, I know you didn't necessarily care for it, but all that hiking and hanging out in mountains and stuff, that's got to be fun. So,
And
so,
biking too.
so
Biking
growing,
too.
there
I
you
love
go.
the bike to
That's
this day.
awesome. Yeah, I did too. So growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
Well, definitely my father.
Okay.
My father had gone through World War II. He was a what they called a hump pilot. He
Hmm.
flew planes from India to China over the Himalayas, over Mount Everest, and they called them
Wow.
hump pilots. unpressurized cabin, at 25,000 feet uh, with oxygen. And, like, uh, there's a lot to the guy
Mhm.
that, I never thought about him being a hero till like 10 years ago. They found a wreck of a plane in the Himalayas that was obviously one of, maybe it wasn't someone who knew him, but it was somebody, who flew the same route. And a lot of people died, and they're still finding the wrecks there 80 years later. And I never thought of him as a hero, but I said, man, you're 21 years old, you're flying a crappy prop plane, a B
Mhm.
24, that, if you lose power, you just fall like a stone. That thing
Yeah.
had no grace whatsoever.
Yeah.
And, he had like 5,000 hours. And in addition, just a little anecdote, which kind of made me anti-establishment, but basically, when he signed up there, he hated the army, hated being told what to do, you know, when to do it, when to go to the bathroom, all this, orders are orders. And the deal was, hey, if you flew X number of missions, you got to go home.
Mhm.
So he's volunteering like crazy because he just wants to get home. My mother was pregnant at that point, had my sister. This is in 1945, and he
Mhm.
just wants out. And then he's almost there, and they raise the hours.
Oh, jeez.
So he was really pissed. But then said, okay, so he's volunteering again, and he's almost there again, and they do the same thing to him. And that's when he had it. But you couldn't not fly, because if
Yeah.
you refused to fly, they court martial you, you wind up in prison.
Right.
So instead, he would go over the plane with a fine tooth comb, find something wrong with it. If he couldn't find anything wrong with it, he was also an ace mechanic. He'd take it out to the end of the runway, and he knew how to blow out an engine without anyone knowing that you did it.
Mm.
And, so this went on for months, where he just said, hey, your planes are no good. Give
Mhm.
me an airworthy plane and I'll fly it. But if it's not airworthy, I'm not flying it. And he didn't fly. And they said, we know what you're doing. We know what you're doing. He said, I don't know what you're talking about.
Mhm.
Give me an airworthy plane. I'll fly it. So finally, they didn't know whether to court martial him, promote him, or send him home. So they sent him home. And
Mhm.
that's how he beat the army. And he was always resented petty bureaucratic authority for the
Yeah.
rest of his life.
Yeah.
And
That had to have been frustrating.
yeah, yeah, but he beat him in the end. He beat Catch 22. Remember Catch 22? It's
Yeah.
like, you got to be crazy to go up in that plane, but there's a catch. If you know you're crazy to go up in that plane, then you're not crazy.
Mhm.
And that's why they couldn't say they were crazy and get out of flying. But he figured out how to get out of flying.
Wow. That's wild. What a great story.
Yeah.
So you get into law. You then end up moving to Florida, right?
Yeah.
And when you moved to Florida, well, first of all, what precipitated you to move to Florida? What caused that?
Well, I always like to say, from my stand-up act, my marriage went south, and so did I. So I had already retired from law. I didn't want to ever practice it
Yeah.
again. I'd had enough of it. So I started podcasting, and then the marriage went down the tubes, and then I moved
Yeah.
and never looked back. That
Gotcha.
was 12 years ago.
I gotcha. So what's your favorite thing about living where you live in Florida?
My favorite thing is, like, it's a leisure-based lifestyle.
Yeah.
So, like, in New York, you spend 80% of your time, you know, making money,
Mhm.
furthering your career, 20% having fun. Here, it's the exact opposite. It's 20% on your career, 80% of the time having fun.
Yeah.
And, the lifestyle, being by the water, you can't beat the weather, except in the summers. So, all of that.
I gotcha. So you started a podcast in 2010. What made you decide to do that? Was there some sort of a tipping point? Was there something that happened that made you think that that's really what you wanted to do?
Well, I'd always liked being on the radio. I guested a bunch of times, been
Yeah.
on shows, and I always got a big charge out of it. And I'm figuring I'm not going to, like, the way a talk radio guy starts, he starts in Buffalo or Cleveland and works his way up to New York, or, New York was the place at the time. I said,
Right.
I'll just have to buy a radio station and do it. And then, because I was always into economics, Austrian economics from the time I was in college, and I saw Milton and Rose Friedman's special Free to Choose, which made me realize that free markets. And then I got into Austrian economics and Hayek and von Mises and Rothbard, all these guys. And after the financial collapse, the GFC in '08, kind of '08 and '09, I guess it was, kind of the end of '07.
Yeah.
I said, people don't really know what happened here. I got to enlighten the world. And, we're going to have currency problems, and gold is going to be the place to be. And, I bought my first gold back in 1999 and, never sold an ounce. And so I started the podcast talking about different things. First, I was doing it where I was helping people fix their credit, and that just really, they all got into this jam because they abused their credit. I didn't feel like I was doing something useful. Then I said, I'm just going to talk about the economy. I'm going to get guests. I'd been listening to a number of podcasts at that point, and those words that always get you into trouble. How hard can it be to do a podcast? How hard can it be to learn how to fly? Right? How hard can it be to build a house? All those. Anytime you say how hard can it be, you should say very. But I took a course in podcasting from this guy Cliff Ravenscraft, who billed himself as the podcast answer man. I'd been doing some radio, and I would just post a radio show, and I'd get 10, 20 downloads.
Yeah.
And then after the course, I was getting thousands of downloads, for every show. I was getting like 20, 30,000 downloads. And then I said, it was June 27th, 2011. I said, I am now a professional full-time podcaster.
Okay.
And the rest is history.
That's
and
cool.
I wrote a book called Viral Podcasting, How to Earn a Proven Process to Earn 6 Figures from Your Show.
Yeah.
And, for 3-4 years, I just learned how to do it. Everybody thinks, well, I can talk, so I could be a talk show host. But not, I don't have to tell you, nothing could be further from the truth, right?
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, your love of public speaking helps, because, and being in law and all that kind of thing, you got to be able to communicate, and that undoubtedly helps. And I appreciate the fact that you saw a need out there and tried to and did what you could to try to fulfill it, and you're right. I mean, I started my first radio show in 2011, and I did it out of frustration because people were not being told the truth, and they were losing their houses right and left. And I was a real estate broker. I had one of the largest real estate offices in our area. And, I had people coming to me and saying, hey, we're losing our house to foreclosure, and I've been told by a number of people that you can solve it. Well, I couldn't solve it, right? But I figured out that if I could get a bigger megaphone, right? If I could talk to more people at one time, I could at least have an impact. And so I was able to get that started and get it going, and it was cool. We were talking to 16,000 people every hour, so every show. So it was cool. So, and it was one of those things I'll never forget. And it really was a precursor to doing this, So we did a lot of good with it. And it was fun. So you write the book. When did you write Viral Podcasting?
Oh, geez, like 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
What made you write it?
Well, it was because everything out there would just tell you, buy this microphone, get this software. And no book out there really addressed the concept of treating podcasting as a business.
Right.
And I used Libsyn and Rob Welsh, who is who more or less runs the thing. He always said, you have to treat your podcast like a business.
Right.
So I wrote it from that standpoint, but I also covered basic communication techniques like using you instead of, you You is the most important word in radio because
Hmm.
everybody perks up when they hear you.
Hmm.
But what's amazing about podcasting, at least back then, and YouTube for that matter, is that people who could never make it in radio, um, your podcast following is way more forgiving, and because they're into you, they don't really, it's like, yeah, they care about your subject matter. That's what keeps them interested. But really, they connect with you. It's all
Yeah.
about the connections. So I covered that aspect and how to treat it as a business, how to get sponsors, and how to keep sponsors. I mean, I've sold everything: gourmet coffee, bottled water, survival food, Audible audiobooks. I've done everything here,
Wow.
Mike.
That's
And
cool, man.
you know, and I made money at it.
Yeah.
Now it's harder, but it's not impossible.
Yeah.
Um, you should always do this not as your day job unless you've got the money to just give everything up. You just make it a side hustle and you keep getting better and better at it.
Hmm.
And then eventually it becomes your profession. But
Yeah.
it's a profession like lawyers, doctors, tend to look down on people that don't have a so-called profession, but
Hmm.
like a salesperson is every much as a profession as a lawyer or doctor.
Yeah.
um, and you can make more money with less hassle as a salesperson. So
Yes.
we talk about targeting in there, how to find your audience, how to find your voice. The
Hmm.
hardest thing is finding your voice. I did it like so much of what I did in the early 2 years was just practice looking for my voice.
Yeah.
And then eventually I found it. So
Yeah. That's cool, man. I'm glad you wrote the book. That's cool. And I'm glad you've been podcasting all these years. That's even better. So you started the Financial Survival Network. When did you start it and why?
well, like I said, I started it really, that was going to be the platform for the podcast, and I was going to get a whole bunch of shows from other people and post them. Kind of never did that. Instead, I just had them as guests.
Yeah.
People I considered authorities, guy like Martin Armstrong. Probably many of you out there never heard of him, but when I first started talking to this guy in 2011, stock market was 11, 12,000. And he said, it's going to 45,000,
Wow.
first 35,000, first 32, then 35 and 45. And the last time, I think it was in 18, he said it will reach 45,000 between 22 and 24. And just a couple weeks ago, right, hit
Yeah.
45K.
Yeah.
And now he's saying 62,000 by 2032. So you got
Wow.
7 years to
Yeah.
get on the train here.
No
And,
kidding.
you know, so we get interesting people like him that you're just not going to come into contact with. I didn't want you know Alan Greenspan telling you that irrational exuberance. I wanted people that you weren't going to hear from
Right.
in your daily travels, and a
Yeah.
lot of the guests that I got have become like famous guests on a lot of other people's podcasts.
Yeah. That's cool, man. That's cool. So the
Yeah,
Financial Survival Network is about sharing with people how to better their lives, right? And make
yeah.
money and do it in a way that's I guess the best way to put it is with less risk, right?
Yeah, and the least risky way to improve your lot, what I've learned over the years, is invest in yourself. Human
Yeah.
capital. That is the most valuable capital.
Yeah.
You might not get filthy rich investing in yourself, but you'll get to a point if you acquire the proper skills where, hey, if you can sell,
Hmm.
Mike, even in this day and age of digital everything and AI, if you can sell, there's people still want to hire you.
Yeah.
And you still can make six figures, but you got to pay your dues. You got
Yeah.
to put in the 10,000 hours slaving away how to talk to people, how to communicate, how to message, how to frame, how to overcome objections, all that stuff. And, so the first and foremost thing is, and because now with the internet, even AI, you can learn anything. There's
Hmm.
no limit to what you can learn.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm with you. So is there anything else you'd like to cover before we wrap up?
Just that never run your life
Put that into perspective.
from sorry about that. My phone just went off.
We're all right.
Yeah, never run your life from where fear is controlling you.
Yeah.
Okay. Because bad things will always happen when you act from fear, whether it's fear of losing a relationship, fear of going broke, fear of failing, and what is fear? The old acronym, false evidence appearing real.
Yeah.
But, Henry Ford said it best. If you believe you can do it or you believe you can't do it, either way, you're right.
It's true.
And, if Elon Musk ran his life from a perspective of fear, where would he be now?
Yeah.
If Donald Trump, love the guy or hate him, if Donald Trump just said, oh my God, they're trying to put me in jail. Oh my God, they don't like me. They're cursing me and all that. What would he have ever accomplished?
It's true.
So fear is the enemy. And when you're trying to learn, fear of not being able to learn stops you from learning.
Yeah.
So it's really never, always live your life from strength, not from fear. Fear is weakness. And just like the animals in the jungle smell it and they attack it, so too do human beings.
Yeah. Yeah. It's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. Those are really, really wise words. And I know everybody's better for hearing them. Kerry, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. This has been a lot of fun, and it certainly has been enlightening.
Likewise, and you will receive an invitation to appear on Financial Survival Network in the not too distant future. We're looking forward to having you on as well, and love to talk to you anytime you've got time.
You got it, buddy. I'm looking forward to it. We're gonna have a lot of fun together. Thanks, man.
Okay, so we're good.
Yep, we're good. Take care. Thanks for being here.
Hey, my pleasure. All right, you be well. Take care.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.